Surely the fine, trustworthy folk of the bipartisan January 6th committee would not have deleted evidence before turning over the files to the Republicans. Surely they would never have done such a thing.
I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office.
But you guys won. You guys held.
Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler, and if I look a little frustrated, it's only because I shot this entire vlog and then turned around to see that my phone was not recording. All right, the news of the day is that allegedly, possibly, according to sources, the January 6th committee deleted or encrypted over 100 files before turning over the January 6th investigation materials to the GOP after they took control of, is it the House or the Senate? Or both? After they took... Well, get to the headline. Here's the headline. From the New York Post, House Jan 6 committee deleted more than 100 encrypted files days before GOP took majority. Sources: Brooke Singman, Fox News, January 22nd, 2024. The forensics team, according to sources familiar with their search, determined that 117 files were both deleted and encrypted. Sources said those files were deleted on January 1st, 2023, just days before Thompson's team was required to transfer the data to the new committee. Well, holy crab apples, that looks a little sus, as the children say, but I am not one to believe anonymous sources just because it's saying something that I want to believe. I will approach this story with the requisite skepticism that I approach all anonymous sources. But before we even get into the article, and we're going to read another article from the Daily Caller, let's just back this up a little bit to the news of the week last week, when Donald Trump, according to his detractors, in a state of demented senility, accidentally mistakenly called Nancy Pelosi Nikki Haley multiple times while talking about how Nancy Pelosi had the power to request the National Guard on January 6th and refused to do so.
Nikki Haley, did you know they destroyed all of the information, all of the evidence, everything, deleted and destroyed all of it, because of lots of things. Like Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people, soldiers, National Guard, so whatever they want. They turned it down. They don't want to talk about that.
That is the video, and shame on Donald Trump. How could he possibly have mistaken Nikki Haley for Nancy Pelosi while he's campaigning in the primary against Nikki Haley, talking about Nancy Pelosi as relates to the events of January 6th? This clearly shows he is just as demented, senile, and mentally incompetent as Joe Biden. Yeah, anyone who has never mistakenly made a mistake on someone's name can criticize Trump, but you know what? There's going to be nobody who does that. So everyone out there needs to shut the heck up. This is not evidence of senility. This is evidence of someone who in the moment confused two names for good reason. But there are some people out there who are convinced that Donald Trump was playing 4D chess and deliberately confused Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi, so that when people come out and criticize him for mixing up the names, they tacitly recognize that Nancy Pelosi or others within the Washington Capitol Police structure had the authority to request the National Guard and did not do so. And so when people are running around saying, oh, the idiot buffoon confused Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi, well, they're tacitly recognizing the truth of the substance of what he said, and that is all that is important. From the internet genius and probably paid Democrat operative Victor Shi 2020. Hey, NBC and the New York Times, you wrote that Donald Trump, quote, appeared, end quote, to have mixed up Nikki Haley for Nancy Pelosi. No, he did mix them up. Your inability to clearly call out Trump's gas and your incessant focus on President Biden's is getting effing exhausting. And he censors the F word so that he can maximize monetization on Twitter. Now, the truly amazing thing is that it's very hard to get a strict answer on who had the authority to request and or deploy the National Guard on January 6th in the Capitol. It's a little confusing to get an answer to that question, because when you go to the fact checkers, they are all fact checking a question that no one asked as to whether or not Nancy Pelosi refused the National Guard. That is not, was not, and never will be the question. So thank you for fact checking something that nobody's asking about. The question is not whether or not Nancy Pelosi refused the National Guard. That's the straw man. The question is who had the authority to request deployment of the National Guard. You will recall that had Donald Trump deployed the National Guard without a request to that effect, he would have been accused of staging a military coup. And if you don't trust me, let's just go back to an article from The Hill. DC National Guard deployment wasn't purposefully delayed on Jan 6, final report finds, December 23rd, 2022. The committee also found there were, quote, genuine, end quote, concerns that Trump might try to use the military for a coup attempt as lawmakers counted Electoral College ballots to certify President Biden's win, since the former commander-in-chief used the military to respond to racial justice protests in summer 2020. It's truly genius in its diabolical evil. Had Trump deployed the National Guard without a specific request to that effect from Nancy Pelosi, Yogananda Pittman, or whoever was in charge at the Capitol Police, he would have been accused of staging a military coup by bringing in the National Guard. When he doesn't deploy the National Guard because Nancy Pelosi didn't ask for it, Yogananda Pittman didn't ask for it, nobody within the Capitol Police structure requested it, then he's accused of insurrection through inaction. I kid you not, that's literally what the courts came to by way of decision in Colorado. The bottom line consensus seems to be that Donald Trump had the authority to deploy the National Guard if it was so requested. He offered the National Guard. It was not so requested for reasons that we now totally understand, because it was an inside job setup. Lee hop, me hop, let it happen on purpose, made it happen on purpose, so they could weaponize it specifically for the reasons they're doing that, to try to get Trump off the ballot. You know, get Trump off the ballot in order to preserve democracy.
That doesn't make sense.
Okay, so that is the prelude into the news of the day, which is the allegation that the fine folk of the bipartisan kangaroo court sham of an unlawfully formed January 6th committee allegedly deleted encrypted evidence, deleted encrypted stuff from their files before turning it over to the GOP, who took control. I'm getting confused on the terms of the art here. Did they take control of the House or the... It's in the article. Let's just go to the article for a second. From the Daily Caller, January 6th committee reportedly deleted 117 files containing, quote, critical information, end quote, reports. The former House Select Committee on January 6th reportedly deleted 117 files containing, quote, critical information, end quote, before Republicans took back the majority in the House of Representatives. There you go. That's the word I couldn't figure out. I'm just a lowly Canadian, people, so forgive me, the House of Representatives. But let's just see what these allegations are in more detail. The House Administration Committee's Oversight Subcommittee, which is investigating both the 2021 Capitol riot and the previous Democrat-led inquiry into the riot, learned that as the House transitioned to GOP control in 2023, more than 100 files were encrypted and purged from hard drives, according to the New York Post. Now, I will open up the same caveat here. I am skeptical about anonymous sources, and I'm also skeptical about one article referencing the breaking story from another, because if the New York Post got it wrong, now you have the Daily Caller basically regurgitating the New York Post article. So it could be that this entire story is total bunk. But because I'm a responsible quasi-journalist, I took to Twitter to ask Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Benny Thompson, surely this is an inaccurate fake news story, right? The sources got it wrong. Surely you did not delete evidence before submitting it over to your political adversaries. Just answer the question. I won't hold my breath. Nobody's going to answer that question because they're a bunch of pathological liars. Hey, Rep Kinzinger, Rep Liz Cheney, and Benny G. Thompson, this is fake news, right? The sources got it wrong. You didn't actually delete any Jan 6 files, did you? But what is the evidence to substantiate this allegation, you might be asking? Well, let's get to the article to see what they flesh out by way of details. A digital forensics team hired by Loudermilk's committee found that 117 files were deleted on January 1st, 2023, days before the transition of power following the midterm elections. Quote, sources familiar with their search, end quote, told Fox News. Yes, it's according to sources. Yes, I asked by way of tweet and do not expect an answer. But if you ask the likes of Aaron Rupar, who, if you don't know who he is, look him up, because his name has literally become a definition in the Urban Dictionary for getting lied to. But if you ask Aaron Rupar, no, they didn't do any such thing. Now, this goes back to an article that predates this particular article, so he might want to update that article. But this is what Aaron Rupar, or whichever journalist he was working with at the time, said in early January. From Public Notice, Aaron Rupar, www.publicnotice.co. No, Donald Trump, the January 6th committee did not destroy evidence. And as you get into the article itself, the Secret Service, clearly the January 6th Select Committee didn't, quote, destroy, end quote, all the evidence it collected. The committee's final report runs to 845 pages, and tens of thousands of pages of witness transcripts and committee notes are available online. But those transcripts do not include interviews with Secret Service agents, and if there's a kernel of truth to Trump's ranting, it's here. Committee Chair Benny Thompson and Vice Chair Liz Cheney do indeed appear to have deliberately removed the Secret Service interview from congressional control before the committee was dissolved, but they had a good reason to do so. Now let me see if I can do this in one breath. No, they didn't delete the evidence, you MAGA extremist conspiracy theorists, but if they did delete the evidence, it was for a lawful reason, and if they did delete the evidence, but it wasn't for a lawful reason, it was for the greater good, but if they did delete the evidence and it wasn't for a lawful reason and it wasn't for the greater good, you're a conspiracy theorist MAGA extremist for noticing. Oh, I did it. But yeah, Trump is lying because they didn't delete all the evidence. They might have deleted some, but it was for a damn good reason. Oh my goodness. Anyhow, maybe Rupar wants to update that article, which predates this article, which seems to have a little bit more evidence as to what exactly was deleted from the files before they gave it over to their political rivals. Back to the Daily Caller article, quote, one recovered file disclosed the identity of an individual whose testimony was not archived by the Select Committee, end quote, Loudermilk wrote. Quote, further, we found that most of the recovered files are password protected, preventing us from determining what they contain, end quote. Loudermilk noticed that most of the recovered files required a password to access, asking Thompson to give him, quote, a list of passwords for all password protected files created by the Select Committee, end quote. So his committee can, quote, access these files and ensure they are properly archived, according to the outlet. Loudermilk also requested that the White House General Counsel and the General Counsel of the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, provide, quote, unedited and unredacted transcripts, end quote, of White House and DHS testimony to the former Select Committee, the outlet reported. The chairman set the deadline for White House and DHS compliance for January 24. Now, I am not holding my breath for compliance within the imparted delays. All that I'm saying is that the House Select Committee is probably learning a very important lesson. They should have gone the Hillary Clinton route, used bleach bit or hammers, because they seem to have left evidence of a potential, I won't say crime, but of a potential cover-up, or at the very least, evidence of absence or total lack of transparency. And while I continue to not hold my breath for the response that's not going to come, I just want to remind everybody out there, January 6th was a Fedsurrection, to use Darren Beatty's term. It was an inside job set up, a lee-hop, me-hop, whatever you want to call it. It was done on purpose so it could be weaponized specifically and exactly for the reasons that we are now seeing this, to criminalize speech, to criminalize protest, to criminalize basically half of the population, your political rivals, and to try to get Donald Trump off the ballot so that they could so that they could fortify this election the way they fortified the last one. And if that is not abundantly clear to you, you are not paying attention, or you do not want to pay attention. But with that said, if you like what I do, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm. If you want to support the work that I do, Viva Frei on Rumble, Viva Frei on Twitter, vivabarneslaw.locals.com on Locals. $10 a month, $100 a year at a discounted rate for tons of exclusive content, or you could just be a member and get access to tons of stuff that's available to everybody. vivabarneslaw.locals.com. But more important than anything, get out there, exercise, eat healthy, talk to people in real life, and now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
Thank you to our witnesses. I never expected today to be quite as emotional for me as it has been. I've talked to a number of you and gotten to know you. I think it's important to tell you right now, though. You guys may individually feel a little broken. You guys all talk about the effects you have to deal with, and you talk about the impact of that day. But you guys won.
You guys helped.